Hey everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian of Supermarsy.com, and welcome to the 15th edition of my 2015 MIFF video reviews. For this one, I will be reviewing the New Zealand horror comedy DEATHGASM, and as well as the Taiwanese film CEMETERY of SPLENDOUR. So let's get right into it. And as I've stated in previous MIFF videos, and I'm going to state it again, even though I shouldn't, but whatever, I do what I want. I'll be reading the synopsis for these films from the MIFF guide, so that way I do not screw up the synopsis. But I can guarantee you that I probably will. So, so let's get right into it. And first up, of course, is DEATHGASM. Brody is an outcast metalhead until he meets his kindred spirit, Zach. They start a band and stumble across sheet music that promises ultimate power to the player. Of course, they take the challenge, but also summon ancient evil in the process. How can they stop it from destroying humankind? I think here's the thing about horror comedy. It's a pretty kind of subgenre of horror to get right, because there are so many great horror comedies out there. You know, like An American Werewolf in London, Brain Dead, and Shaun of the Dead, and there are so many others. But at the same time, there are a lot of films out there that don't quite get it right, but it's a tricky combination to pull off. But that being said, though, I think for most part, I think DEATHGASM does a pretty solid job at sort of finding that line between the horror and the comedy. I will say this though, like I'm just going to put it out front. I don't think this is a great horror comedy by any means. But that being said, though, I still think it's a really solid one that sets out to exactly what it set out to do, is to provide something that's both fun and some laughs, and as well has a lot of gore too. So, and in that regard, the film's writer-director, Jason Lee Howden, I think does a pretty solid job with his film. I believe, yeah, this is his directorial debut, so I have to say I think he did a pretty good job with this film as his directorial debut. This is a film that has a lot of energy, and it knows exactly what type of audience it's going for. It's definitely a film that would appeal for both metalheads, horror fans, and I think it has a lot of things in it that anyone who's sort of in those categories can enjoy. And of course, it has a pretty witty script, some pretty solid performances from its cast, and like I said, it just has a really good tone throughout. And there's some, like I said, there's some pretty funny moments in there, and also the gore and the makeup effects with the film's demons are pretty good. And there's just, yeah, it's just a solid, fun film, and that's pretty much all you just want. Or most of the time, it's just something that's, you know, you can sit back, relax, and just have fun with. And it's the perfect kind of film for the night shift section of the Melbourne International Film Festival. I mean, because the past two weeks of watching films at the festival, I've been watching a lot of stuff that's, you know, kind of very dark or heavy or dramatic, and it's just good to have something that's a bit more lighter to watch, and something that, you know, you can just, you know, sit back and enjoy. And I think for most part, I think DEATHGASM does achieve that. But that being said, though, like I said, it's not a great horror comedy by any means, even though the film is pretty funny at times. But at a lot of the times, though, a lot of the humor is very teenage based. And so you got jokes about boobs and nudity and sex and penises and all that. And a lot of that, some of that does work, and other times it's just kind of falls flat. But that's the thing. I don't have too much of a problem with that, but I think a lot of people probably would. So I figured give you the heads up about that. And also, even though it's a pretty well-paced film, and it's not a film that overstays its welcome, I kind of wish it was a little bit longer, because a lot of the time the film does feel like it's rushing through its story, and it just kind of streamlines through events, because once the band kind of play this sort of evil song, everyone in town basically turns into demons right away, and usually that'd be fine. But it's more like it doesn't happen, like the demons don't take over till like, you know, the following day. But even then, it sort of like rushes through that very quickly. And also, not only that, character development's a bit rushed. Like the story just goes to jumps to one thing to another without any kind of connective tissue, and yeah, it's just one. And also, the film kind of ends on an ending. Like, I get what it's going for, but I just didn't think it quite worked, and I wish the ending was better. But overall, though, like for what it is, it's a pretty solid horror comedy, and it's a well done debut for Jason Lee Howden. I can definitely see him. You can tell he has a lot of love for the horror genre and also heavy metal. So all of that shines through in this film. So, and it's definitely one I think horror fans will enjoy. Personally, I think it could have been a bit better, but for what it is, it's perfectly fine. So, if I had to give DEATHGASM a rating, I would give it 3 stars. So, now with that one out of the way, let's get right into my next film, which of course is the film CEMETERY of Splendor. And what's this one about? I shall tell you. Lonely housewife Janjira I probably pronounced her character's name wrong, so forgive me. Volunteers at a hospital for soldiers suffering from narcolepsy. When one of her bedridden charges captures her attention, she enlists a medium to commune with his sleeping spirit. In a hallucinatory bond between the two women, the pain of times gone by combines with the reality of the present. I should say beforehand that the film CEMETERY of Splendor is the follow-up film for director... now, I'm probably going to get this director's name wrong, so forgive me if I get it wrong. Apachat Pong Wiras Kakul. I probably butchered his name, so forgive me. If you don't know who he is, he's the director of the 2010 Palme d'Or winning film Uncle Booney, Who Can Recall His Past Lives. And I did see that film a couple of years ago, and to be honest, I wasn't too much of a fan of it, to be honest. And but at the same time, I knew there was kind of a talent in there. But the thing was, the film had a lot of problems. Well, at least for me anyway. But when I first heard of CEMETERY of Splendor, I was actually captured by the title, and I thought, okay, this is a really cool title for a movie. And then I sort of read into it and discovered this was the follow-up film from the same director of Uncle Booney. I thought, okay, even though I wasn't too much of a fan of that one, I'll give this one a chance. So I have to say, though, while it does suffer from the same type of flaws that did bother me with Uncle Booney, I actually enjoyed this one a lot more, and I actually found it a pretty solid film. And I'll just get it out of the way. Just like Uncle Booney, it does have the same type of flaws. I do think this is a film that did not need to be 2 hours long. And for the first hour, I found it very interesting and compelling. But once it gets into the second hour, that's when it you can start to feel the pace of the film. Like, it's a pretty slow-paced film anyway, but you feel it more so in the second hour. And at times, it just drags as well, and it sort of became a little frustrating. But that being said, though, what did make this film work for me is... actually, I'm just going to put it out there. I did like this film, but I have to admit, I'm not exactly sure why I like it. And I think I have to say, though, I guess trying to figure out why I actually dug this one more so than Uncle Booney, I found the overall plot, the one that I sort of mentioned, I found that much more interesting of a premise for this film. And once I'm sort of sitting there watching it, like I said, it's a very sort of slow, deliberately paced film, but I found it from the very beginning right to the very last one very absorbing and almost kind of hypnotic. It's a beautiful looking film. Like, even though the director kind of shoots things that are so kind of, I guess, when you sort of think about it, kind of mundane stuff, there's sort of a hypnotic feel to it that you can't help but just feel engrossed by everything that's happening on screen. And also kind of what I really liked about this film, and applies to Uncle Booney as well, and this is a film that feels like it's very in depth with Taiwanese culture. Like you got sort of like the political side and the mysticism side and the mythology side, and just sort of the way of life that that people in Thailand live. And I think the film really sort of I don't know how accurate of a portrayal it is, but I assume that it is, and in that way it kind of gives the film both an authenticity, but also it gives it something that feels kind of unique of itself. And that's one of the reasons why I was really taken in. And also the story itself, the sort of the basic premise I found quite interesting, because the film, through this premise, kind of explores all these kind of sort of the culture of Thailand. And I just found it fascinating as a viewer from both a thematic level and concept level, and also kind of a storytelling level as well. And of course the lead actress who plays the role of Janjira, I probably, again, if I pronounce the character's name wrong, I apologize. I found her, even though it's not a very showy performance, but I found her character really interesting and engaging as well. But there are a lot of characters in that I felt the same way about as well. And it's weird though, because like I talked in a previous MIFF video, how for The Assassin, how I hated the pacing of that film, how boring it was, and how nothing made sense. And in a way, I should be feeling about that with Cemetery of Splendor, but I don't. I actually found this one much more... it's a much more... Just like The Assassin, it's a much more slow-paced film that is a very simple story, but there's a lot more to it under the surface that I found interesting, and that to me sort of made this film more engaging to me as a viewer than, say, The Assassin did, and even more so than Uncle Booney did. And so overall, but at the same time, I do think the sort of the pacing and the overlength and the sort of dragging issues kind of really hindered the film in a lot of ways, to me. And I think if it was sort of shorter, a bit more tighter, and didn't drag as much, I probably would have really liked this film a lot more. I mean, I do like it, but I think it's sort of the flaws that kind of stop it, to me, from being a truly great film. So if I had to give Cemetery of Splendor a rating, I give it about 3 stars. Like I said, the flaws kind of hinder it a bit, and I really, really like the first hour, but once I get to the second hour, that's when the problems start bubbling to the surface. So, but this is a film I think a lot of people... it's not a film for everyone, and this is where I can definitely see some people hating. But I think if you go in with this one in an open mind, I think you might find it, as I did, strangely absorbing and hypnotic. So, that's the... Oh, if I do rates... So, that's the end of this 15th edition of my MIFF video reviews. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and keep a lookout very soon for my 6th edition, in which I'll be reviewing the indie psychological thriller Queen of Earth, and the first part of the Arabian Nights trilogy. So keep a lookout for that one, and I'll talk to you guys later. See you, everyone.